Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus said to the Pharisees, "There was a rich man who dressed in purple garments and fine linen and dined sumptuously each day. And lying at his door was a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who would gladly have eaten his fill of the scraps that fell from the rich man's table. Dogs even used to come and lick his sores. When the poor man died, he was carried away by angels to the bosom of Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried, and from the netherworld, where he was in torment, he raised his eyes and saw Abraham far off, and Lazarus at his side. And he cried out, 'Father Abraham, have pity on me. Send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am suffering torment in these flames.' Abraham replied, 'My child, remember that you received what was good during your lifetime, while Lazarus likewise received what was bad. But now he is comforted here, whereas you are tormented. Moreover, between us and you a great chasm is established, to prevent anyone from crossing who might wish to go from our side to yours, or from your side to ours.' He said, 'Then I beg you, Father, send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, so that he may warn them, lest they too come to this place of torment.' But Abraham replied, 'They have Moses and the prophets. Let them listen to them.' He said, 'Oh no, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent.' Then Abraham said, 'If they will not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be persuaded if someone should arise from the dead.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
St. Irenaeus, one of our church fathers, made the statement, "Our God is a generous God." It seems like a very obvious statement. It doesn't seem anything earth-shattering that our father, St. Irenaeus, is teaching us, but not everyone believes it. Not everyone believes how generous our God is. And yet everything that we have that is good comes from God. We can't claim anything. Even our body, our soul, our brains, our intellect. Even if we're able to do great things, they all have their source in God's goodness, his generosity, his greatness towards us. I have friends of mine who, their family is very devout, and one of their children in particular is very, very intelligent. And he went off to college, and the first year or two was fine, but by the time he graduated, and I'll just add that he was so smart that he basically went to college for free. He had lots of scholarships. But he graduated, and now he wants nothing to do with God. He doesn't think that anything that happened really had to do with God. And his family is very perplexed. He was raised in a very devout family. But something happened that he took in his heart and mind, that he started believing that everything he did, and he did participate, right? He used his brain, his intelligence. But somewhere along the line, he began to think that he was his own source, that he was his own God, that it was all coming from him, that all these things, these good things that were happening were because of him making it happen, and not all the wonderful generosity of our God. we need to understand what generosity is in order to go into this meditation on today's gospel. It's not a gospel about those who are rich don't go to heaven, those who are poor do. It's about generosity and overcoming self-centeredness. The poor can be self-centered too. Anybody can be prideful. So when we see Lazarus today in heaven, it wasn't because he was poor. We don't know much about him. We do know his name, but he was very poor. He was ill. But I can imagine that his disposition was he still remained faithful to God. He probably still was very kind to people, kind to the animals, the dogs that were licking his wounds. Maybe he smiled to people. If you've met people, some people that are poor, they can be extremely generous. They're very generous and loving as well. What we find with the rich man was that he was not generous. He was consumed with his own wants, his own desires, his own pleasures. He couldn't see beyond himself to the needs of others. He may have seen Lazarus day after day, but he didn't really see him. When we want to understand how we can be generous, we need to meditate on Jesus. He is the ultimate model of generosity. He is generous, and we know this is true because he gives his whole life to us. All we need to do is meditate upon the cross. And as we meditate upon the cross, there is the incredible example of generosity. He gave his life so that we would be free. He gave his life so that we could find our way home to heaven. As we continue our Lenten time, our Lenten preparation for Easter, maybe we could take today, a few minutes today later on, and just look upon the crucifix and ask ourselves, am I generous, not just with money, but with the talents that God has given to me? Am I generous with how I approach people, my kindness? And do I ultimately see the generosity of my God, that everything I have that is good, ultimately has its source in him and in his love?
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia, ora pro nobis Deum, alleluia.